We are going to start chapter 3 today, which is our whole chapter of finance. In order to talk about these questions, we need to define a bunch of terms and variables. The first one is principal, which is going to be the letter P, is going to be the amount of money deposited or borrowed. So depending on your situation, it can be money that you put into an account or money that you borrowed. So you earn interest on money you deposit. You pay interest on money you borrowed. Which leads us to interest, I. That is going to be the fee you pay to borrow the money, or it could be the money you earn just from having the account. So like if you have a checking account or a savings account, a lot of times you get a really small interest. You earn a few cents every month. But it can also be what you pay when you get a loan. The rate, R, is going to be the actual interest rate in percentage form. So you always get it in a percent. You must turn that percent into decimal form by dividing by 100. So anytime you put the rate into a formula, if it's 5.2%, you're going to take 5.2 divided by 100. That is 0.052. And then time, T, is always representative of the number of years. So time is always in regards to years. So if you're given a value in terms of months, you have to turn that into a fraction or decimal form of how many years that is. So 3 months would be a quarter of a year, 0.25. 6 months would be half a year, 0.5. Always relating it in terms of years. And the first equation we are going to look at is called the simple interest formula, which just says we take interest equals principal times rate times time. Given our formula has 4 variables, we will be given 3 of them, and we will be asked to solve for the remaining piece. So we may be asked to find I, we may be asked to find P, R, or T, depending on the situation that we are given. Starting easy, they tell us P is $300, R is 7%, T is 2 years. What is I? So if interest equals principal times rate times time, all I'm going to do is fill in my values. I is the one I am looking for. Principal is 300. Rate is 7%. So if I take 7 divided by 100, that is 0.07. That is going to be plugged in for R. And then T is 2. And all you have to do is grab a calculator, scientific calculator. You're just going to type 300 times 0.07 times 2, and you should get $42. Next one says, if $3,000 is loaned for 4 months at 4.5 annual rate, how much interest is earned? So again, we are looking for I. We have $3,000 for the loan. Now, I only have it for 4 months. Oops, sorry, that's T. R is next. 4.5 divided by 100 is 0.045. Now back to T. 4 months is a fraction of a year. It is 1/3 of a year, right? 4 months out of 12 months is equal to 1/3 of a year. So the time is going to be 1/3. And again, you just go to your calculator, type 3,000 times 0.045 times 1/3, and you should get 45. Next one. A loan of $7,260 was repaid at the end of 8 months. What size repayment check, principal and interest was written if an 8% annual rate of interest was charged? Well, we have so far our P, our time, and our rate. So we're going to start with calculating our interest. So interest equals principal 7,260 times rate 8%. So 8 out of 100 is 0.08 times time. 8 months out of 12 months represents 2/3 of a year. Remember, time is always in years. And this is a loan. We are only calculating the simple interest on the loan. So if I take 7,260 times 0.08 times 2/3, you get an interest charge of $387.20. Now, when you take a loan, you must pay back the entire loan amount plus the interest. So that is what this is asking for here. What size repayment check, principal and interest, has to be written? So I need to pay back principal plus interest. Well, the principal was $7,260. That was how much I borrowed. And then I also have to pay back the interest of $387.20. So if I add those together, $7,647.20 is what I would pay back in full. Our next one gives us our interest of $36, a rate of 4%, a time of 6 months, and asks us, what is the principal? For this, I'm going to have to work backwards. So 36 equals, I don't know P. R is 4 divided by 100, or 0.04. And 6 months is half a year. What I like to do is multiply the numbers on the right-hand side here. So 36 equals P times half of 0.04 is 0.02. And now I have P times 0.02. To get P by itself, all I have to then do is divide by the 0.02. And when I do that, my initial principal was $1,800. Now we're going to solve one for R, and then we're also going to solve one for T. A loan of $4,000 was repaid at the end of 10 months with a check of $4,270. What annual rate of interest was charged? So here's my principal, 4,000. My time is 10 months, but it's going to be 10 out of 12, which is 5/6 of a year. And I'm given my entire repayment. So if I repaid a total of $4,270 on a $4,000 loan, how much was the interest? $270. It's the excess above the loan amount. So total repayment equals principal plus interest. So then I could just subtract principal to find the interest. So interest 270 equals 4,000 times R. We don't know R, and T is 5/6. When I multiply on the right-hand side, 4,000 times 5/6, I kind of get a messy answer. It ends up being $3,333.33, or the 3 just keeps repeating. I said 4,000 times 5 divided by 6. And then to get R by itself, I'm going to divide by that 3,333.33. So again, just grab your calculator, do your division, and you're going to get 0.081. I rounded. And then remember that this is the equation version of it. So if I want to talk about it in terms of an actual interest rate, I could then times it by 100, and that would be an 8.1% rate. So in the equation, it's divided by 100. To take it out of the equation, you're going to times by 100 to turn it back into a percent. Last one for this type here. It says interest is $60. P is $2,400. R is 5%. What is T? So 60 equals 2,400 times, I got to divide that by 100, 0.05 times T. If I take 2,400 times 0.05, I get 120 T equals 60. And then I can just divide by the 120, and I'll get T equals a half. Remembering that T is in terms of a year, so half a year, you could leave it like that, or you could also change that into 6 months because half a year is 6 months. We are going to learn one additional formula today. It is still considered a simple interest. However, what it's going to do is it's going to, rather than calculate the interest separately and then add it to the principal, what it does is it calculates it all together. So in this formula, it's A equals P times the quantity 1 plus RT. A is the future value or the money you want to have in the future. So it's either going to be the amount you want to have in the future or the amount that will be in the future. And P is our current or present or initial value. R and T are still the same, the interest rate in time in terms of years. So this third problem we did was it asked us for the total reinstallment payment, and we calculated the interest first and then added back to the principal. I could have done that problem with just this formula instead. So 53, this problem we actually already did, right? A loan of $7,260 was repaid at the end of 8 months. What size repayment check, principal, and interest was written if 8% rate was charged? So we did it, the first one, calculated P times R times T, and then added it back to P. So think about it here. If I multiply this out, this is P plus R plus T. I could have done it all in one formula rather than 2 steps. So I could have done this one as 7,260, open parentheses, 1 plus, again, you always have to change that rate, 8 over 100, 0.08 times 8 months out of 12 was that 2/3 value. You want to make sure you're using a scientific calculator that has parentheses when you are typing these in. Otherwise, it is not going to give you the correct answer. So if you have a handheld, you can use that. If you want to open up Desmos, that works too. You're literally just typing it exactly as you see it. 7,260, open parentheses, 1 plus 0.08 times 2/3. And you should get the same answer we got the first time. 7,000, that's a 4, not a 7. $7,647.20. Next one says A is 910, R is 16%, T is 13 weeks. What is P? So following our formula, A is 910 equals P, I don't know, 1 plus 16 out of 100 is 0.16. Now, time was given in terms of weeks. How many weeks are there in a year? 52. So our time is you're going to take 13 weeks out of 52 weeks because this is always representative, the fraction of a whole year. So when it was months, we divided it by 12. If it's weeks, you're going to divide it by 52. If they say days, what are you going to divide by? 365, exactly. All right. So again, calculator, I'm going to need to do this part first. The 1 plus 0.16 times 13 over 52. So if I do that, 1 plus 0.16 times 13 over 52, that comes out nice, 1.04. But 910 equals P times 1.04. So then I'm just going to divide by 1.04 to get P, which is going to equal 875. Suppose you need $4,000 in 10 months. What should you invest at 5% interest to reach this goal? So this is our future value. This is what we want to have our A. Our time is 10 out of 12 or 5/6. What should you invest is your P. 5% interest, 5 out of 100 makes 0.05. So let's see, 4,000 equals P times 1 plus 0.05 times 5/6. This one doesn't come out as nicely when I do 1 plus 0.05 times 5/6. So usually when it doesn't come out as nicely, I go a few extra decimal points. 1.0417. The more you leave, the more accurate your final answer is going to be. If you round here, you may be off by like a few cents in the final answer. So I'll divide by the 1.0417 and I will get $3,839.88. So just to show you the difference, if I had left this as if it was only like, I rounded it to 1.04, and when I divide 4,000 by 1.04, I would have gotten an answer $3,847.12. So you can see how just adding those two extra decimals, that 1.7, there is a difference of almost $8. So always, if you can, especially if you're using like Desmos, you could. The other way to do this, let me show you quick. Didn't want to actually flip off of the problem. The most accurate way to type this, so you don't even have to worry about rounding, would be I could have just taken the 4,000 divided by, in parentheses, 1 plus 0.05 times 5/6. So if I didn't want to round it all, it actually comes out even nicer, 3,840. So you can see just how like rounding can make it a little different. It's just because this guy was a repeating decimal here. So I was off by about 12 cents compared to the exact answer there. Generally, when you are doing these, be it in Pearson or on a test, there's a little bit of leeway. So there will be some above and below error that they will allow you to go between. So just know that you may get slightly different answers than the person next to you, just based on how you rounded, when you rounded, stuff like that. But it should all count. All right, I think these are our last two for today. We have an A of 22,135. P is $19,000. And we let it sit for 39 weeks. So 1 plus, we don't know R. So R is going to stay there. 39 out of 52. This one is going to be a little bit more labor intensive just because the R is contained inside of the parentheses. Generally, what I like to do first is divide out that 19,000. So if I take 22,135 divided by 19,000, I get 1.165 equals 1 plus R times 39 over 52. For me, I don't like to distribute in the 19,000 because I'm going to multiply it and then I'm going to have to divide it back out later. So I just divide it out first so that I save myself the step. Then I can subtract the 1 from both sides. So 0.165 equals R times 39 over 52. And then usually how we get rid of a fraction, since we don't like dividing by fractions, is we multiply by the reciprocal, 52 over 39. So I'm going to multiply 0.165 by 52 over 39. And I get 0.22 equals R. And again, remember that that is the formula version. If I times it by 100, that means I have a 22% interest rate, which is unheard of. You're not going to find that anywhere, not in today's world, but last one says, what annual interest rate is earned on a 33-day T-bill with a maturity value of $1,000 that sells for $996.16? Basically, what this means is you buy it for $996.16, and 33 days later, it's now worth $1,000. So you gain about $4 in interest. That's what this is saying here. 1,000 equals 996.16. 1 plus, again, we are looking for R, but this one is a day problem. So 33 days out of 365. And then it's pretty much just like what we did in the previous problem. This one's going to be messy. So I will pull this up here. If I take 1,000 divided by 996.16, I get this. The nice thing with Desmos here is I can highlight this and just hit like Control-C, copy it, and paste it. So then I could subtract 1 from it. So then I can take what I got and then multiply by the reciprocal. So times 365 over 33. And then I didn't round anywhere in my work until I get to the final part here. So 0.043. Write the that gave me roughly, I'm going to write out what I have roughly. You subtracted the 1, and then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So 0.043 is going to be times by 100 for a 4.3%. Sweet. Class is over. Chapters 8 and 9. It is a total of 24 questions. Remembering we talked about the Markov chains, we talked about probabilities. So in the Markov chains, we talked about finding our transition matrix, our transition diagrams. We talked about finding our steady state matrix. Probabilities, we did basics, ors, ands, conditionals. Probability if you're given like a table. Stationary matrix. I'm just looking through all the problems. Expected value. Dice probability. That I want to say, when do I have it due? It is due by Monday. So don't come to class on Thursday. I give you it off to work on this, and then I will see you back next week.